G'day and welcome to the Grow a Small Business Podcast. I'm your host, Troy Trewin. Each week, we speak with an owner who has grown a business with 5 to 30 team members to something bigger. Diving into their numbers and unearthing the pain they've experienced, we explore what they did to overcome each barrier and what they would do differently from day one. Let's get into it. Welcome everyone. Today I'm interviewing Feras Alhlou from Startup With Feras, based in San Jose, United States. Thanks for your time today, Feras.
Hey, Troy, pleasure to be with you.
Let's start with how we know each other. Cynthia, your PR person from Adele Media Services, put us in touch. Thought you'd be a great guest.
Yeah, we trying to get the message out and speak with like-minded folks who are helping other entrepreneurs. So really looking forward to this discussion.
Tell our audience a bit about your business, what it does and how it makes money.
So we started Startup With Feras about a couple of years ago, basically producing content for entrepreneurs, specifically those who have an idea and want to start a business and they're struggling, they're not sure how to start. And then those who started and now they're struggling in sales and marketing. And we're focusing on the services and consulting businesses, but our content, I would say 70-80% of it applies to all businesses. So we produce content and we are actually, as of this moment, we're not monetizing yet. We will be monetizing soon, but great content. So hopefully your audience will check it out.
Yeah, great. So maybe explain what are the main areas you typically help a business that's about to start up or just started up and wants to grow a bit more?
Yeah, so a lot of people, I speak with maybe 1 to 2 founders on a weekly basis, and people sometimes have an idea and they're not sure how to start it. They're not maybe they know a subject matter, they have an expertise in one area, but they're not sure how to sell, how to market, so they struggle with just getting the business, off the ground. Others, they struggle with the financial aspect of things. We're used to salaries and benefits and retirement plans. And now, oh my goodness, I'm going to be on my own. How will I make it? How will I, take care of my family? So a lot of fears, a lot of concerns. What we try to do is sort of demystify all of that and help people with step-by-step, like here's how I've done it. Here's how I've seen other founders have done it, and help people with tools and resources to really overcome the fears and the concerns. A lot of them are valid concerns.
Yeah, and I like to break down that myth early on. People think it's a lot easier to start a small business, and I explained the 4x2 rule I heard in London. Have you heard of that?
The 4x2, and I'd love to hear from you.
This venture capitalist spoke at a conference I was at and summed it up pretty nicely, I think, because he obviously gets hit up for money a lot from startup entrepreneurs, and he schools them early on and says it's either going to take 4 times as long and cost twice as much, or take twice as long and cost 4 times as much. The only difference is you get to choose which path you walk.
I love it. I mean, what I say is it takes you 5 times harder. It's, just entrepreneurship. And Troy, unfortunately, there's a lot of stuff online today where this whole get rich quick, I would call them schemes. People have to discern what information they get. And I think, offering pragmatic, honest, practical advice is what I try to do after all these years. It's not about making the next buck. It's really helping others, making it big.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the main reasons we do this podcast, is to help other business owners, not startups. Our audience is mainly already going, got at least 5 team members, but to give them some nuggets and education on mistakes other people have made, but things they got right as well. So I'm really looking forward to our chat. How did you start out?
So we moved to the Silicon Valley back in 1998 with a young family. Got into the startup scene. I was in a tech startup. I was a VP at a cutting edge startup. And then the dreaded layoff notice showed up.
Was that during the dot-com crash?
That was actually in 2003. So 3 years after the bubble burst. We raised a lot of money, $96 million. And it was an infrastructure type startup. So it wasn't sort of like the web vans of the world. But we ran out of money as a startup, and then I was let go, and then the company folded not too long after that. The market was really dry, the job market. I couldn't find a job. I was sending resumes, didn't get one interview. So ran into a friend of mine who was also looking to do something, and we put our resources together, a little money we had, some savings, and then the time, and then that's how we got started. And that was the dawn of the internet. So we got into Google search and web design and those sort of things. That was pretty cutting edge at the time.
Yeah. What year was that? Did you start the business?
That was 2003.
2003. That was your first business. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
Or maybe take us through that journey and other businesses you've had up to now.
Yeah, so it took us a little bit of time to figure out how to sell. I didn't have any sales background, neither did my partner. And I'm supposed to be he was more of sort of the strategy, the back office person. I was the go out there and sell. So for those entrepreneurs who are listening today, if you don't have a sales background, it's not the end of the world. You can learn it. If I learn it, it's possible, it's doable. So I had to listen to CDs at the time, had to read books, attend, paid for courses to go on, and learn. And then once we closed that very first project, it was a small website for $1,400. And I remember that day we closed that deal after so many rejections, Troy. It was the sweetest moment when we got that check, the 50% deposit. And then I had at that point said, you know what? I just sold something. I know I can sell to others. It was the first several weeks we couldn't sell, rejection after rejection. And then from that point on, we continued to focus on small and mid-sized business, small businesses initially, and then gradually we graduated and started to sell to mid-sized businesses. And later on, as we pivoted and started to specialize, we focused on analytics, digital analytics, and we became a Google certified partner. This is later, closer to 2009, I believe. And that's when we started to get leads from Fortune 500. And we were still a small business at the time. I think there was about maybe 15 of us. But we started to get leads because we got listed on the Google certified Google partners. And that portal at the time, that's when people who were looking for that service, they went to. And that was a huge positive change for the business, working with small and mid-sized businesses to get these Fortune 500 leads. Again, we fumbled a lot initially with these Fortune 500, but later we figured it out, we learned from our mistakes and then maintained that, selling to larger businesses.
Yeah, just going back to your comment on that first sale, for 50% deposit, $1,400. I started a web design development company with three mates late 1999 in Melbourne, and started an e-tailer at the same time as well, working 100-hour weeks. That was just stupid. But I distinctly remember the first sale we got, and I was on two of the four business partners on the sales kind of side of things. And yeah, just that feeling. I think it was $500 Aussie, so about 300 US dollars for a website in late 99. It was a great feeling to land that first sale.
Absolutely, because you know that, oh my goodness, especially if you don't have a sales background, selling is scary. All these emotions of rejections, you remember this sleazy salesperson that you dealt with, last time. So, and what are people going to say about me? And it's dirty the sales is a dirty word. So all of those emotions, but you got to be out there and do it. And as you do more of it, as you know, Troy, as you pitch more, pitches get easier. As you present and do demos, they get easier. As you get more questions and more rejections, you know how to answer them better the next time. So my journey, I would say, if I were to summarize, is about learning from my own mistakes. And I'm also a sponge in terms of learning, speaking with others, those who are maybe they're going through the same challenges as you are, and those who have been to where you want to go, other people who've maybe made it in a similar situation, similar type of business. I'm always either taking notes on my phone or in the old days, just on a piece of paper on the back of my business card, just so that I can learn that and apply it to my business.
Yeah, I'm the same. I spend about 10 hours a week on 1.5 speed listening to audiobooks or podcasts. Just so important for that continual development and learning. What ended up happening with that business? Where did that get to?
So that famous graph of success is not just a straight line, like ups and downs and curves and softballs and hardballs and everything, every other analogy. So we were part of a franchise at one point in time. And once it took us a little bit of time to figure out the franchising system, and we ended up being a top earner. Again, a lot of hard work, a lot of time spent with top franchisees to learn the tricks from them. And they were an amazing bunch, very gracious with their time and effort. And then we actually built, as we were relying more on contractors, this is late 2009, 2010, we figured out, instead of relying on contractors, and offshoring was a thing at the time, we built an offshore company for web development. So we were doing portals. We went from just design to actual development, and we built a company of 45 people. So that was another experience, kind of learn from building a business here and the culture and taking care of people and hiring the right people. We applied those learnings to that other business, and we grew that business to 45 people, and that was in Egypt. And that was providing support to all of our US-based clients. So that was another experience where we had to put a lot of time traveling overseas, working nights over there to support the US business. And we were in the US, we were working early mornings, late nights to support the team overseas. But that also did end up paying off really well for us in terms of selling that business and then refocusing back on the analytics practice that we established here.
Right. And any other businesses since then?
So fast forward to 2013 or so, 2012, 2013, once we became a very well-established analytics agency here in the US, we figured out we can branch and offer the same service to a new region. So a friend of mine, and this is the importance of networking and making sure your reputation is solid and people want to partner with you and do business with you. A person I had known from the mid 90s, late 90s, when in my first job, who had traveled to Dubai, settled there for a little bit, and then moved back to the US. And he was, he had a good network in Dubai. And he said, "Hey, Feras, you have a thriving business here. There's a market for what you offer there." So he made a couple of connections, and then we started our business, the Dubai branch of our US business in 2012 or 2013. And that also ended up becoming a certified partner with Google in that region, attracting really top clients in so many different sectors. So that was another venture, different time zone. I don't know, maybe I'm destined to work across different time zones. But that also, again, a bit of struggle to find the right talent, to replicate the systems that we have here in the US in a different region, different market, understanding the cultural differences in how you sell, how you deliver. So those are really important for us, for those in your audience who want to branch to other markets, to other geographies. What works in one market, in one geography, might not necessarily work in a different one. So be aware, talk to local people, people who have done similar businesses, and then you have to tweak your processes across the board. And that took us a while. Again, a lot of learnings, few scars, but it turned out to be a good business, a thriving business still today, actually. Yeah.
And do you still own that, or you've sold it on?
So that business, so later when we sold the analytics business in the US to Dentsu, the global media giant, the Dubai business was its own independent entity, legal entity. So that wasn't part of the acquisition. So I left that business. I had my commitment to the acquirer, and there were some contractual terms. So once I left the acquirer in 2021, and after my non-compete period ended, my original co-founder in Dubai, he asked me to rejoin and be more of an advisor, sort of board level support, strategic support, expanding, in Europe and the US now, out of Dubai. So that's what I'm doing on that business. Not really involved day to day, more of sort of relationship building. I have a lot of good network in the analytics space, so leveraging that for that business.
So back in 2003, when you started out, how old were you then?
So 2003, I was 37, yeah.
And do you have some key numbers you can share to illustrate the growth of the business?
Yeah, so we started zero, $1,400 the first sale. And then just to give folks a point of reference, in 2019, when we sold that original business, Enor, to Dentsu, we were at eight figures at that time.
Wow, that's great.
So again, we kind of, I think it took us about 5-6 years to get to seven figures. But then we sort of, the growth path for this entity sort of was on hold because we built that business in Egypt. Then we built that business in Dubai. But later, after we got Dubai established, we had a general manager there that was taking care of the business, and we shared the processes and the systems. We really doubled down on our analytics business here in the US, and it ended up becoming top three or four providers on the Google Analytics service to the enterprise globally, that is. And that, I mean, that obviously, uh, that relationship with Google and investing in that partnership and riding that wave of digital transformation. And a lot of companies wanted to get data and get good data, and they want to action on that data. And that was something where I would say, for young entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs in general, like look for trends in the industry, look for maybe a provider that has a software, a platform, and they don't offer professional services around it, especially if that's sort of it's a nascent technology, new thing that people are adopting. Typically, these partners want these platform providers, in our case was Google, they invest heavily in their partners and help them grow because you need people to implement, to train, to provide solutions. So that was really a strategic decision for us that paid off really well. Again, we happened to be in the right time, in the right moment. So luck is definitely part of it, but we did put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into it.
Oh, and it's a great service to provide. I mean, Google Analytics, as you know, is a beast. It's very complex and powerful, but it's bloody hard to use and navigate, particularly when you first get in there. It's quite overwhelming. But yeah, the data that you can pull from it is amazing.
Yeah, and I think looking at industry trends. So at one point we didn't have mobile as right as businesses as people, and then when the mobile revolution came around, and now companies now they figured out their analytics on their websites. Now I have apps. I got to measure apps. I have to measure the user experience on my apps and also on my websites. So we try to be not ahead of the curve necessarily, but also in our industry, in our space, attending conferences, networking events, investing in those partnerships we had, and try to also be there when there's a new trend, a new technology, new things. And I think this is something that people can, in their, whether it's healthcare or banking or home loan services, whatever the case might be, there are always changes that I think, and trends and things that professional service providers can leverage.
Yeah. And how many full-time equivalents did you start with, and where did you get to in your peak?
So we started, it was my business partner and I. So two FTEs, I don't know, but working 60, 70 hours a week. So you can do the math.
Yep.
So it's more like
More than
four
two.
FTEs.
Yeah.
And then, it took us a couple of years, we had about five people. And then again, if you look, we built that business in Egypt, that was its own sort of contained about 40, 44, 5 people. And then that base analytics business that we maintained and then eventually sold, we grew it to about, I think we had 45, 50 people by the time we sold it.
That's great. Tremendous
Yeah.
growth. Well done.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
When was the moment you felt like you had succeeded?
They're different. I think different. So that first sale was amazing, as I said. And then I think reaching a specific revenue number, I want to be a seven figure. Like it didn't happen overnight. It didn't happen over 2 years. Maybe I'm slow. I don't know what, but it took us a few years to get there. But we did have growth targets in terms of revenue. So I think that growth mindset, I think it was Phil Knight, the founder of Nike, who said life is about growth. You grow or you die. So I took that literally, and so we were obsessed with the growth. How do we get the next next bigger client? How do we get this talent? I can't afford this consultant. How can I lure them in and tell them that we have this amazing culture, this amazing company? I can't pay you as much as you can get elsewhere, but I guarantee you that as we get more profitable, I will share. And we did deliver on that point. I'll talk about it in a bit. But yeah, in terms of the numbers, so it took us a while to get to that seven figure. And then once you get there, I always tell founders, what gets you to that 1 million in revenue, it's not going to get you to the 2 million mark. And obviously, same thing with profitability. So you have to start looking at processes, systems. You have to look at how to scale things without you having to do everything. And that's really hard for founders. We're all sort of obsessed. It's our baby. We got to take care of it. No one can do it as well as we can. No, my friend. Other people will do it better than you. You just
Yep.
have to let go and
Get out
focus
of your
on
own way. Yep.
Yeah. So they're not, so it did take us a while, uh, but just kind of that growth mindset really fueled our just the way we thought about the business every quarter and every year.
What does success look like to you?
I know maybe this is cliche. It's not about money. I'm a capitalist at heart, and I want to make that next buck, the buck like the next guy more than the next guy. But it's also about setting out a goal and accomplishing that goal and getting the reward and sharing the reward. So to me, I'll just give you an example. I don't talk about this a lot, Troy, but I'll share it. I think I might have shared it on another podcast. But in 2016, our profit margins in this US business, in the analytics business, were really nice. And that was sustained quarter over quarter. And we started to share more with our employees in terms of benefits, and we covered their entire health insurance. Like, didn't have to pay a penny. That was unheard of for a small business, mid-sized business at the time. So we made a commitment to our team that if we get an investor and acquire, we will take 30% of the number, whatever that number is, and we would share with the employees. And we had a simple formula: how many years you've been in the business times a factor of your salary. And I was very happy when we sold the business to Dentsu, because it's a big accomplishment. It was, I'm in Silicon Valley, and people talk about exiting and selling all the time. So it was nice to have done that. Um, but I was in honest to God, I was equally as happy of the millions of dollars that were that the big chunk of money that was distributed to our team members as well. So that concept of setting out a goal, achieving that goal, and then sharing the fruits of your labor with those who have helped you along the way, to me, that's success.
So yeah,
In a professional in a professional sense, in the
yeah,
professional capacity.
yeah. So you sound like a good capitalist, not the Gordon Gekko greed is good.
Yeah, conscious. Yeah,
Yep.
there are a number of names of that. But yeah, I mean, sharing, there's a lot. How many cars do you need? How many houses do you
Exactly.
need? You can
Yep.
always get more. So,
Yep. Number one thing you'd recommend to marketing a fast growing business.
number one, you know, it's all about sales. So if you are, as a founder, a business owner, if you're not seeing the growth, it could be for a lot of reasons. You could be selling and then really struggling with delivery, but you can find people who deliver. As a founder, as a business owner, there's no escape. Even if you hate sales, you gotta know it. And if because you gotta know it so you can hire the right person to do it for you
Yep.
after you sell. So it's really that mind sort of obsession with the growth and selling, and figure out how to sell more efficiently, how to sell and get, better projects, meaning bigger revenue, bigger profit. That is really important, especially in the early stages of the business. Eventually, if sales is not your thing, and you really can't do it, and you hate it, but you've managed to do it because you had to, you can hire someone who would lead sales for you, and probably will do a better job at you in setting up processes and hiring maybe, junior talent to help you even scale further.
Yeah, it's a good point. You need to do it yourself, even if it's not something you're naturally aligned to or like. Before you hand that over to someone off market, you need to understand at least that corner of the business, so you are going to have a better chance of hiring an A player as that sales lead.
Yeah, and like we have I'm into martial arts. I'm into Aikido, third degree black belt, and still learning, by the way, there. So we have these black belt principles at Startup with Feras, and one of them is passion is optional, skills and sacrifice are not. So I think we sometimes get too distracted by passion. Follow your passion. Follow. You have skill. You got to have skills, and you got to put the time and the resources, and then eventually maybe you'll be passionate about one aspect of the business. In my case, like when clients were happy and they would leave us a testimonial and they would praise our team members, to me that was like that drove me like to do more than anything else. So whatever your passion is, it could be the back office, it could be accounting, like you're just obsessed with numbers and you want to make sure the numbers are all done right. So that eventually you can afford to focus on one area. Uh, but initially you gotta get the skills. You gotta be the master of your domain, whatever you do, and you gotta put the time and effort. And then I think it'll pay off big time. And then you can be a bit more, and you'll have options to do different things, different, maybe different aspects of the business.
Yep. And how did you fund the business? Was it entirely bootstrapped or you got investors in?
Yeah, as bootstrapping was the theme. So my partner, I mean, just to be realistic with people, like we didn't sell. Like I said, the first sale was the skimpy $1,400, which very appreciative of. And that restaurant, it's a Greek restaurant here in Santa Clara, still thriving. So happy to see that. But it was we didn't take a whole lot of, I mean, we didn't take money, so if you look, I mean, I was a VP in tech making, comfortable living here. But for several months when we started the business, there was no money to take home. So we tapped into our savings. We agreed on a certain amount that we put in the business. And that was really the first several months. And then as we start to get sales, obviously that helped. But at one point, Troy, and I say this with caution, when we really felt, this is maybe a couple of years into it, when we really felt good about the business, like we've got some recurring revenue, we were selling to bigger clients, we needed money. So I depleted my 401k plan. So for those of us outside the US, 401k in the US is my retirement plan, or me and my wife and my family
Yep.
retirement plan. But I believed in the business wholeheartedly, and we had some signs of success. And it was a very risky decision. I had to get my wife's approval on that. And I advise people, like, don't take crazy risky decisions, like especially if you impact others in your life on your own. Don't take those decisions on your own. Involve others. So that's how and my partner as well put in money into it at the same time. So we both pitched in. We didn't get any investment. We didn't get any loans at the time. What we did, one last thing here, again, another risky thing, is we used to get we had good credit scores here in the US. So we get all these amazing offers from these credit card companies. They're vultures. They want you, right? So they tell you, here's, you can have $15,000, don't pay interest on it for 12 months. And now if you're late by one day, it's like 30% APR. So it's criminal. I had a short on it that that got thousands of views, but we did that actually. But we were very disciplined, and we made sure we pay on time. So again, I don't advise these financial ways to everyone unless you're really financial disciplined, and you've got the okay and the support of those impacted by those decisions, and make sure it's a calculated risk. But at times we had to throw everything in, and we're fortunate that it paid off. So
How did the conversation go with your wife about tapping the 401k?
she's an amazing woman. So we've been married for 36 years now. She believed in what we were doing, and she saw that we were working really hard. And throughout the first couple of years, like, she would say, "Are you sure this is what you want to do? Is there?" I mean, in a very supportive way.
Mm.
Um, but she was supportive from day one. If that's what you believe is the right thing to do, pursue it, do it. No time for no vacation this year. That was okay. So I made sure we made it up later. But she was very supportive. But again, I think keeping your stakeholders involved. If I went and showed her all the balance sheets and all the P&Ls, and that's just not, she would get it, of course, but that's not, it's really showing her that you're serious, you're committed. You're not just partying every other night and traveling on the weekends and doing things. You're really putting your heart and soul into it. I think you'll get the support of not just your spouses, but even advisors and your network. They see you're serious. I think you get a lot of support that way.
If you were to start up today with plenty of funding, would you go into your industry?
I think, I mean, you want to avoid industries that are on a downturn.
Mm.
and I always share examples. If you look at the data from, in our case, from the Bureau of Labor Statistics and other government sites, they tell you one of the number one, I think, growing space in the US in services is medical elderly care. I mean, we have in the US, we have an aging population in
Yep.
a lot of the countries, and there's a shortage of elderly care. So if you're into this kind of thing or you want to get into it, I mean, this is booming. I would avoid things that are potentially not, if you go to certain parts of the country, some industries are not, not doing as well. So I think find industries that are on the moving upward, up to the right, and also things that your skill. I think the most important thing are the skills that you have. So whether you've been working maybe just for 5 or 6 years, you sort of you're, young person, 5 years, after college, you have some skills, or maybe you're like a mid-career person, and now you want to pivot and build your climb your second mountain. I mean, do a quick assessment of your skills, hard skills that you know, and then soft skills, listening, sales, people skills, communication, and then see if you can map that to a product you want to build or a service you want to offer in an industry that's not dying. So obviously there could be things like the pandemic that could
Hmm.
shut everything down. That's just beyond our control. But I think, I mean, just one last thing here on AI. I know it's a buzzword. No, it's not a buzzword anymore. AI is real, is around us. I joke about it, but people are doing it. Like if you write well today, a lot of people don't know how to just write good prompts, thorough prompts into that GPT or into Google Gemini. So that could be a service you can help those who are not very technical and they're afraid of even just opening Chat GPT. And then potentially you can find tools and help people in things that are, if you're into process automation, can you leverage AI to offer that as part of your offering, or maybe just use it to do things, in a more, more expedited way?
Yep.
So I would say look for opportunities where you can maximize, you leverage the skills that you have, both soft skills and hard skills.
Can you outline the most stressful point in your small business growth journey so our audience can learn from it?
So many. I mean, there's one probably. I'll get emotional if I talk about it because I had a partner who's young and he passed away. So that's a different episode. I'll get into it. I'll get emotional very quickly on that. I mean, I think the most stressful when it was time to ask someone to leave. Uh, the very first time. Not that it gets easier, but later after you've done it, maybe the first time you learn how to do it properly, you know how to prevent, you know how to provide people with feedback so you avoid firing someone, or at least they know it's coming. But the very first hire back to sales there, Troy, we wanted to grow the business. And I figured, hey, I'm selling, I'm doing well. I want to get into larger accounts. Let's get in a seasoned salesperson. So we interviewed a few people. We hired this person. He's a sales guy, so he sold us a bag of goods. Unfortunately, 3 months into it, after paying a whole lot of money that we barely had, he had hardly any qualified leads and zero deals that he closed. And we're selling small projects still at the time. So we had to ask him to leave. That was really hard. That was really hard. I mean, it took me 2 weeks to figure out how to do it. We were in one office, five of us, and what do I do? And there wasn't a whole lot of resources in 2006, I think, at the time to learn, on YouTube how to do it right. So that was really hard. And I tell founders now, there's this thing about hiring slow and firing fast. I mean, you got to hire when you got to hire, but do your due diligence. And I did a live stream, I think like about a month ago or so, where I listed all the 10 mistakes I made in hiring.
Yep.
So you can hire the right person so that you don't have to end up firing them.
Absolutely. Yeah. Recruitment's the most important thing a manager does, I believe. So you've really got to learn how to do that. And a lot of small business owners rush it. They suffer the warm body syndrome. I just need someone in to help with the workload. They don't invest time to swat up on how to be a great recruiter.
Yeah, and it takes time. You gotta make sure that job description is well detailed. It describes what you need. It describes your company. It describes if you bring in a top talent from, let's say, someone who worked in an enterprise, large business, and sold to large businesses, and you are a small business selling to small businesses, I mean, the top salesperson there, he or she are not likely to be able to perform well in your business because they don't have, and I've had this in a different business where we hired someone as I described, and they couldn't help us because, and I don't want to point the finger, it wasn't them, it wasn't us, probably a mixture of blaming each other here.
Mhm.
The contributing factors to that failure, and part of it is that we did not explain our setting. Like we don't have any marketing material, we don't have any case studies, we don't have a marketing automation tool. You gotta hunt and you
Yep.
gotta gather, you
Mm.
gotta do everything in between. So I think defining what you gotta hire for, and then making sure they understand what they're getting themselves into, and providing a lot of support in onboarding. I
Yep.
think that's really important for small businesses and for founders.
Yeah, great point. What area in business do you feel you've had to work on the most to add the greatest value?
Working on the business, and again, maybe this sounds as a cliche, but working on the business, I think, is the most important thing that a founder can do and should do. So you can work in the business. I'm delivering. I'm writing an article. I'm sending an invoice. That's not going to help you grow. At times you have to do it, but you have to block some time end of the day Friday, first thing on Monday, over the weekend, where you think about the business, work on the business. Okay, it's the end of the quarter. How did we do last quarter? We had 10 new clients. 8 were happy, 2 were unhappy. Why? Right. So that, right, spending time with people, with clients, to your point earlier about getting feedback from clients, like that's really important. How do I scale? Where am I spending my time? If I'm still, if, and this is, I see this a lot with founders. Spoke with someone who's running yet another data analytics company. He's 5 years in the business. He still sends invoices, and
Wow.
he's
Yeah.
he's complaining, I mean, or he's not happy with his growth. So I said, my friend, I'm not going to tell you anything that's earth shattering, but if you're busy dealing with accounting, you're not going to be selling.
Yep.
So outsource the entire accounting function to someone who can come in. It'll cost you $400, $500 a month. But then you know, so I think working on the business for me specifically, on this content, the media and this business advisory business, we're in this building phase. So really, I'm like still figuring out, like, how do you figure out the YouTube nut?
Mm.
how do
Yep.
you how do you figure out the newsletter nut? How do you produce and set up systems so we can produce more efficiently? So I'm really, like, it's really early stage now for us in this, at this age, got myself into this new venture, but it's pretty exciting. I'm pretty excited about it. And I have an amazing co-founder, an amazing team. But really, I'm in the building phases now. So I'm like hands-on, trying just to understand this new niche that we are into, this content creation niche.
What have you enjoyed the least about managing fast growth?
Doing the things that I am not good at. At one point, as I said earlier, you have to do everything it takes. You have to do whatever it takes. You have to do every aspect of the business when you're by yourself, maybe with your business partner. But at one point, if you hated accounting, which my case, and I was doing it for a number of years, because I thought no one else, because I was the one selling, I was the one tracking when the contract was over, was when the payment was due. I knew that I have to run payroll, so it's all here. And then and it adds to the stress, and it's then at nights and on the weekends. So I had lunch with a friend of mine who was a director of finance, and he said, Feras, and we were just chatting about the growth, and he said, why are you still doing this? So that was the best advice. And I said, can someone help me? Because I thought I'd have to have a full-time CFO and a
Yep.
full-time bookkeeper. He said, no, 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 no. There's this concept, and this is early on. This concept of fractional wasn't there. Like now you can get a fractional CTO, a fractional CFO. So he introduced me to a couple of companies. We interviewed them, and then we hired one of them. And it took us about 3 months to set up these systems. And I was just helping sales, passing on the contract internally, and I'm done. I would meet with a CFO, fractional CFO, um, for an hour at the end of the month, like the second week of the month, and we look at the numbers, we look at the trends, and he set up a system for us. And without it, I don't think we would have been able later to sell that business, because if we didn't have good accounting system and a good bookkeeping system and a good sales plan, revenue plan, then you really, people are just not going to trust your numbers.
What do you love most about growing a small business?
Mindset. I think learning is a big thing for me. And I learned the hard way when I was laid off is at time, because I was a VP at the time. We had like, I think we had 150, or at one point we had 200 people in that company. You have to be hands-on. And if you don't know your space, first, people can take you on a ride. Second, you don't know how to properly plan for things. So I had a technical background when I went to college in engineering and computer science, and then I had a shift into things that are more like people type, account management, project management, and when I was promoted and got into a director and a VP, I sort of didn't invest enough time to understand the ins and outs of what my team is doing. And that did not help at one point, because then I'm sort of like middle management. When times are tough, middle management is the first segment of the company that ends up getting that layoff notice. So I think the mindset of learning and digging deeper is really important. So initially, you might have to dig deeper into delivery and to sales. Later, as you grow the business, you have to dig deeper into strategy, into growth, into finding partners. But you always, at whatever phase of your growth that you're in, you have to, I think, learn what is needed for that phase to grow beyond it.
Yep. That answers the next question on mindset, but what do you love most about growing a small business?
It's just growing to me is, if I'm not growing, like if things are stale, it's really annoying, because you end up doing the same thing. So that growth and working, like finding people who are like-minded. They should have complementary skills. They might be the pessimist and you're the optimist. So it's okay to have people, you're better off having people with different backgrounds and different perspectives and different talents on your team. You don't want to have yes people around you. That's just not good. So, but having people who work hard, who are nice, who share the same values, that is to me, because I end up spending 12 hours a day working. Like that's just even after we sold the business, I don't know, maybe it's a bug I have. I work hard. That's my motto in life: work hard, play hard. So if it's going to be working with people who are jerks or not nice, not kind, have attitude, they're not working hard, they're not good at their the area of the business, it's just going to make that work day really hard. And we spend most of our waking time at work with people, right? Whether it's remote or in person.
Yep.
So I love just building, amassing amazing people that we together can build something really it's something that we're really proud of.
The number one habit you think a small business owner needs to develop and maintain?
Initially, and I think it's important throughout the journey, is that mindset of resilience, of just picking yourself back up after you fail. And it's not about if you will fail. For the audience, for the listeners who are starting a business, or maybe they started and they're struggling, you'll fail in sales, you'll fail in delivery, you'll fail in marketing, you'll spend $2,000 on a campaign that gets you 0 leads. It's going to be painful, especially when you spend those $2,000 on a campaign instead of hiring someone. But the important part is learn from that failure, learn from that lesson, and be honest with yourself. Ask tough questions, because sometimes we glorify that there's a culture of glorifying mistakes. Oh yeah, it's part of the journey. No, sometimes we make stupid mistakes. Like we did not ask the right person. We did not learn. We didn't read a book on the subject. So make sure you don't repeat the same mistakes. Learn from those mistakes, and just get back up on your feet after a failure. I think that's really, really important.
Want specific advice to help you get your business through its #1 growth challenge? Book a free 20-minute growth chat with me, Troy, the founder of Grow a Small Business. I'll recommend some resources which will help you grow your business with ease so you can live the lifestyle you've signed up for. Go to growasmallbusiness.com and click on Growth Chat. Now, you've obviously hired a lot of people over your businesses over the years. Can you talk how you've added people to the team, some wins, mistakes, and advice for those listening?
You mentioned, Troy, you mentioned hiring A people. That's another one of our principles around here is A people. When you hire A people, they will bring A people. And from my experience in all these years, and I've hired hundreds of people in corporate and in the startups that we've started. B people will bring on C people.
Yep,
So
that's
so
right.
so and Paul Graham, one of the founders of the Y Combinator, talks about the productivity, the significance.
Oh, it's a massive chasm between an A player and a B player is huge.
Yeah, I mean, if you're an A player, would you want to work with a C player? Like you wouldn't want. So it behooves you, and it like you would be looking for people who again work hard, they're smart, and most importantly, the culture fit. I mean, as a founder, as a business owner, that culture is on you. You cannot delegate that. So I think you have to model that culture. You have to lead by example. If you want transparency and you lecture your team about transparency and they have to share the feedback with you, their feedback, their discomfort or discontent with things and the feedback from the clients, you have to be transparent yourself. I goofed up. I messed up. I just lost us a client. I just forgot to, if you're asking your team members to submit their timesheets, my friend, you should track your timesheet and submit it ahead of everyone else. So leading by example and hiring people, about culture, that have share the same values that you espouse and that you share and that you embody, I think will help you build that culture that you envision. But you gotta live it, and you gotta preach it, and you gotta talk the talk and walk the walk, as we say.
What are some of the things you recommend to building a sustainable and kick-ass culture to help with the growth?
We sort of touched on this just in this previous answer. As you so when we were 10 and less people, like it was all contained, and I knew everybody and I knew everything that's going on. As you start to scale, as you hire, like when we had 3 4 consultants, I was managing them. They were the consultants who are account managers doing the client facing work. Then once we grew the business, I had a director of consulting who is now managing. So I'm like one layer removed from the action. So I think, for example, what worked well for me is the transparency was a big value for me. And we shared our numbers, our finances with the team at the end of every month. Even when we sold the business, like I was sharing everything with our team later. But I would have my one-on-one with my director. I had 6 people reporting to me. So I'd have religiously every Friday, between Thursday and Friday, we'd meet for 30 minutes and we would talk about personal stuff and family because I forgot to mention, in one of the businesses, it was all remote. Before COVID, we had a
Mm.
remote first culture, and we hired throughout the US, and we had someone in Canada and some folks overseas. So I had to have a system of keeping up with things. So I set that up unless I'm traveling, but we almost 90% of the time we met once a week or at the least once every 2 weeks and went over things that are on people's mind. And me doing this, in a way, it set the tone for the entire organization. So the managers are now doing the same thing. And we had a system, we used a system where everybody can go, like we were measuring the employee satisfaction on a weekly basis. Like, how was this week, better or worse than last week? Why?
Mm.
And people were very reluctant to share. Like new people who came to the company, like they're not used to that kind of transparency. And I said, you want to make me happy? Tell me what we suck at.
Yep.
Tell me what is it that bothers you? If I don't know it, I can't fix it. And some things, again, when money is tight, we could not increase the benefits. But I made a commitment. As our profitability improves, I will share. So, and we shared our numbers, our P&L with the team. So, and if we struggled, everybody knew we struggled. So don't expect a bonus this quarter. And when we did well, guess what? Everybody get a nice bonus. So
Mm.
that worked well for me, is having that value and living that value and making it operationalize that value in the way you conduct your business.
So it sounds like you adopted an open book management style. Have you read Jack Stack's book, The Great Game of Business?
The title is familiar. I'm not sure. I'm a big audio book guy too.
Yep.
I don't remember what was yeah. No, I'd
I'll
love to
send it
hear it.
through to you in case you haven't, but he's got a great chapter there on bonus systems, but they're very big on ESOPs, employee share ownership plans. But also the book came out in 1991. I think they bought the business 1981, 10 years earlier from Caterpillar, and it was an amazing story. But one of the big themes in that book is open book management. They shared all their numbers with all the team. They financially educated them so they could, read a balance sheet and a P&L. Because as he points out in the book, if you ask a team member how much profit do you think the business is making and how much dividends the owners are taking, it's 10 times or 20 times more than what the reality is. So educating them is really powerful on many
Absolutely.
levels. Yeah.
No, no, I'll check it out. No, thanks for pointing that out.
And tell our audience how you've handled balance.
Work-life balance. Ah, I don't think there's it was a big thing many years ago. I don't think there's work-life balance. I think it's managing. Someone said this, not my word, but no, you manage the imbalance in my mind. And I'm a big believer of working hard and playing hard. So if you want to start a business, or if you're a business owner today and you want to grow the business, you cannot. It's not doable. You cannot do that with 40 hours a week. I don't. It just doesn't happen. The co-founder of Airbnb, Brian Chesky, I just watched a video of his, and he said when they started Airbnb, he and his co-founder moved to the Bay Area, and they decided to work from 8 a.m. to midnight, 7 days a week for 3 to 4 months, till they built something. They built some momentum that enabled them to grow now to an over $100 billion company. And his net worth now is, I think, nine or $10 billion. So I'm not saying everybody should do that. I'm not saying everybody can do that. But at some phase, at some stage, at some season of your life, you should be able to put a lot of time. And I think it will pay off handsomely in terms of not just in terms of making millions and all that, but also like in your growth and in building something worthwhile. So if you have at certain phases in my life, I had my dad was aging and he was not here with us, and I had to sort of manage it remotely. And then he was with us for a while before he passed away. My wife was also dealing with something similar, so I couldn't put, even if I wanted, I couldn't put in all that. But there are a lot of time available to us, and I'm all in terms of physically, emotionally, psychologically, like being balanced that way. I train in Aikido at least 3 times a week for the last 15 years. Unless there's an injury, I'm taking care of myself. So you have to do something. You have to walk, do art, whatever the case might be. But if you're spending a lot of leisurely time and you think you want to grow the business and you're not putting the hours at nights and the weekends, then you're kidding yourself. So I'm not saying everybody has to work 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. I'm saying if you want to grow the business and scale it, there are seasons where you have to really, turn on that midnight oil, and then you'll have options in the future whether you want to continue that, or if you have other things, as Tim Ferriss or other people say, like that liberation, that freedom. But it requires a lot of hard work to get to that point. And I think people misquote like the 4 hour work week or the $1 million weekend. Good books, but it's not about you becoming a millionaire over a weekend. It doesn't work that way.
And how much professional development have you invested in yourself?
I am just like yourself. I set a goal of 52 books a year, audiobooks. I end up doing 35, I think, on the average. Um, I still like to set that goal 52. But I do, in terms of, even when we had COVID, there was no training at the school, the martial arts school. I walk around, I go on high, so I think investing in developing yourself in terms of physically staying fit is important. I think intellectually reading, and then in your domain, I think on the average, I'm reading slash listening, I would say probably anywhere between 5 to 10 hours a week. That's what I do. And then the last but very important part is, which we don't talk a lot about in the context of business, is relationships. Not just networking and partnerships and whatnot in your business, But at home, if you're married, obviously the spouse and the children. If you're not, we're all getting to where we have aging people around us, aunts, uncles, people who have touched us in one way or another, especially if we have the means and time is part of the means. It's time to also give back. And last but not least, and this is really important to me, volunteering and helping others, which is a bug that it's in my NDA probably now, is helping others. Even if you're a busy founder, you can pick up the phone and help a struggling founder on something that you've learned on the phone or when you're taking a hike for maybe 15, 20 minutes. So I think having those strong relationships with people that you care for and they care for you is really important. It gives you that I think that it sort of anchors you in a lot of ways.
Have you had mentors or coaches along the way?
Many, many, many. The reading and listening to books, I think you learn a lot from that. And I think, I mean, there's no this sort of like this one mentor that helped a lot. But like I remember early, I think in the 90s, whenever you probably remember that book, the Seven Habits of Highly Effective,
Stephen Covey.
by
Yep.
by the late Stephen Covey. So that was really like to me, and someone had recommended that book. It really gave me a very, very nice framework. And like think, like in terms of you have agency, you don't control what hits you, but you control how you react. Think with end of mind, like think at your eulogy and what you want
Yep.
people to say. Like those, for some reason, and I probably read this maybe 30 years ago. So there are people like this, you read some of these books, like I remember Jim Collins' book, like, Good to Great. Like like you read these books and yes, some of it doesn't apply maybe today. But I think a lot of some recent book I read, Adam Grant on hidden potential, amazing book. So every book I read, my goal now is not just to read, but also take few notes. If I can take maybe 3, 4, 5 things from the book that I just read and apply in business, or maybe one thing I can apply in my own personal life. So a lot of coaches, a lot of people help along the way, including some very gracious competitors that you would meet at networking events, and you're sort of scared, afraid, or just feel embarrassed speaking with. Trust me, people love to help people. So talk to your competitors. You'll learn from them too.
Yeah, that's a good point. Do you have a board of directors or advisors, or did you have a board of directors or advisors?
We didn't have a formal, so when we got acquired, of course, it was a public company and there's a whole structure. But in all the business I've had, we never had a board of advisor. We didn't have investors, external investors. It was always the business partners. So from that perspective, we didn't have a formal board of advisors. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I mean, if you have an investor, they're going to have a say. So,
Yeah. Mm.
but I think always have what I have had throughout is a list of people I will go and speak with when I'm stuck, or just proactively. So there are a couple of people here in the Bay Area that I'm very grateful for. 3 people actually that on a almost on an annual basis, I set up time to go. I just reach out on LinkedIn. Hey, when is a good time to just go have coffee? And just checking on them. And I've been doing this probably for 15 years, and it just kind of learning from them, bouncing off ideas. And they'll probably get more the same out of the conversation as much as I get out of it. But I know, like when I was stuck with the whole area of accounting and finance, I had this person to go to. When I was stuck with in terms of at one point, I want to, it's another story, crypto.
Mhm.
I was thinking to get into crypto. So a friend of mine, again, back to your network, had built a company around crypto. So before I didn't get into it in any big way, just a little bit. Had a couple of conversations with him. Actually met him in person. Read a lot. So find, identify advisors, coaches, mentors. I think that you can tap into. And sometimes you have to pay for that advice. And I think it's worth every penny of it if you can find the right advisor for you.
You're one of the few I've had on that's exited a business. Any advice for our audience listening about exiting one day, thinking about it?
It's a good thing. I mean, at one point, we will all exit the business, whether by natural causes or otherwise. So I think the one secret is build a strong business. I mean, you can get bought even if it's not a good business but you could maybe get bought for pennies on the dollars. So if you build a strong business, meaning you have a team, as you mentioned, Troy, you have the numbers are solid, you have solid growth year over year, top line, bottom line. you become very, very appealing to many others. They might knock on your doors actually in your space. So, but do it. I think you want to do it and plan for it, as opposed to, I'm sick and tired of this business, I want to sell it. I know people have done this and they've lost millions of dollars. I'm not exaggerating, because they're just in the state of mind, you know what, I'm just gonna get a couple $1 million for this business and leave. And if they were just patient and followed they've done their due diligence, they could have maybe, tripled what they have, sold the business for. So build a strong business. That's my single
That's good,
advice.
and good advice, and to be prepared for it. I think something like 90% of businesses that are put on the market to sell never sell. So you've got to be proactive about it.
Yeah, and the process, and for those who have now built a business, I mean, talk to people who specialize in the brokers or financial advisors. I spoke with a few, because there's a formal agreement you have to go through. It's not going to be cheap. They're going to charge you an arm and a leg, and then they'll get a portion, maybe 3, 4, 5%, 6% of the deal. So talk to them and see, and they'll tell you, the good ones, they'll tell you like, you're not ready yet. Your numbers don't make sense. You're not going to get the right multiplier. So again, if you have built a business and you feel for whatever reason, you just want to capitalize on what you've built, just talk to people who have sold businesses similar to yours and those who actually engage in those kind of transactions. So they'll help you put a roadmap for your own business.
Have you read John Warrillow's 3 books, Built to Sell, The Art of Selling a Business, and The Automatic Customer, or listen to his podcast?
I believe at the time when we were selling, yeah, I think at the time in 20, well, that was the big sale. Um, yeah, I think I read every book on the topic at the time. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great material. All right, Ferris, we're on to our final 5 questions. What do you think is the hardest thing in growing a small business?
The hardest thing to in growing a small business, I think we underestimate what it takes. And some of it can be tangible, and some of it is just so much going on. Oh my God, I don't have money to hire, but I gotta hire. I can't I can't deliver. I need someone to help me project manage it. I can't afford. So I think the hardest thing is I think it's really like the mindset, is that you're going to be, we talked about resilience, but is that I'm going to be comfortable or less uncomfortable with the unknowns, the things that are going to hit me that I don't know what they are. And it's going to take more time. As you said, the four by two or two by
Yep,
four
that's
rule.
it.
I'm going to use that. I'm going to quote it. And
Good.
actually, yeah, I mean, those things are real. So don't give up. And you might have to pivot, you might have to double down. But I think the mindset of, there'll be unknowns, things I haven't done before, but stick to it, learn from your mistakes. So I think those are things. It's really like the mindset is really important.
Favorite business book which has helped you the most?
We talked about the 7 habits of the most effective people. I would say the early one of the early books was the one I mentioned as well, the Good to Great. That was at the time was really foundational for me. Yeah.
Any great podcasts or online learning tools you use for your own professional development?
Online, I mean, I watch a lot of YouTube videos these days. Although I did a fast, a three-week fast. I learned a lot. Let me implement. I listened to Prof G podcast, Professor Scott Galloway. He has an interesting perspective on things. But I more of the audio book. I've been reading a lot of books on startups, and because we're in this business of helping founders. So there's a book, The Startup of You, by um, Reid Hoffman, the co-founder of LinkedIn. I read last year. I think it's a great book. There's a book I'm still reading, how not to F up your startup, or how to F up your startup. I don't like, the title, but I forget the name of the author now. Is